Hey guys, so after a little bit of a YouTube hiatus, just catching up with work, getting all the to-do list done, I'm back with a new haircut. I asked Mrs. Fairclough to watch some YouTube videos and cut my hair, and this is the result. I actually kind of like it now. What do you think? So, I thought I'd talk today about one of my favourite bits of filmmaking gear and the biggest surprise to me as well. Bought this, the GoPro Hero 7 Black, a couple of years ago to go on a trip to Africa, and I wanted something which was pretty cheap, pretty rugged, go anywhere, tiny so I could fit it in a pocket all the time. I took the A7 to do the majority of the filming on, but I wanted something which I could just leave out in the rain and storms and whatever came at us in Africa, kind of dust and heat and extreme everything. And yeah, so we bought the GoPro Hero 7 Black, which at the time was the absolute flagship model. Now, I'd never owned a GoPro before, so I didn't really know what to expect. And I thought maybe if I get a few shots from it, it'd be cool, like if we need to go underwater or I need to leave it out for a time lapse. Now, I'll put the Africa film, the trailer version, which is about 4 minutes long, at the end of this review so you can see the footage. But no joke, I ended up using 50% of the footage that's in the film came from this. It absolutely blew me away. There's several things about it which I absolutely love, and I'm going to talk through those now. This isn't going to be like a technical explanation or anything. This is just what I love about kind of going from just using big cameras to having a tiny camera that we can take anywhere and get some kind of good footage from. So first thing I like about it is the form factor. It's here, it's absolutely tiny, it fits in any kind of pocket or bag or anywhere. You can shove it in, it doesn't need a case. I've not managed to scratch the lens, I've not managed to smash anything. It's absolutely brilliant. Now this is with the cage on it as well. If you want to make it even smaller and just use it for some kind of handheld filming, kind of like this, then it gets even smaller, and that's just ridiculous. It runs off a single rechargeable battery, and in the battery slot you also put a micro SD card. Now I've been running a 128 gig SanDisk card in there, and you can fit a hell of a lot of footage on it, like a hell of a lot. So yeah, it fits into this cage. The whole thing is completely waterproof and dustproof and everything proof. And then once it's in the cage, you can attach the cage to whatever you want. Tripod mounts, sticky mounts, there's a Velcro mount. I think you can get like suction mounts as well. But yeah, and I also got a threaded kind of tripod thread adapter, so I could use it with a clamp as well, which has been really handy. So yeah, you can pretty much attach them to anything, and that's GoPro's kind of USP. They are action cameras, so you can mount them to anything. They're not going to die if you get them in the water or if you get them really hot. Like, yeah, it's been pretty flawless. The screen is kind of bright, so you can see in pretty much all conditions. We were in 35-degree African midday sun shooting with this, and I don't think there was many occasions which I couldn't really see the screen, which, you know, is not the case for any of the bigger cameras that we have, so well done GoPro. Another thing that I love is the 4K out of it is super clean. It is absolutely fantastic, and the auto white balance just nails it better than any other camera I've ever had. I can rely on the white balance to be absolutely perfect. I struggle, like, both white balancing off a white card and auto white balancing on the Sony A7 to get accurate colours anywhere near what this thing can do. What they've done with that is just absolutely amazing. And the auto exposure as well for when you're doing time lapses is absolutely spot on. Could not do it better myself. It is remarkable. Now, the instances we used this in were, like I anticipated. We took it in the pool. We didn't get opportunity to take it in the sea, just because of the locations we were at. We didn't get to spend too much time near the seaside. I left it out in a thunderstorm. I left it out for a couple of hours in the middle of the day, like 35 degrees, kind of desert heat. I left it up a mountain for 2 hours when there was a storm coming in as well. Yeah, this got pretty much left in every place which you wouldn't like to leave kind of a real camera, because it would definitely get ruined. Yeah, so this has been absolutely fantastic for that. The time lapses from it are super smooth. With the wide field of view and shooting from a distance, the distortion isn't a problem. Yeah, I thought it would be. I didn't think I liked that kind of GoPro fisheye distortion, and in the super view mode, which is like the really wide mode, I don't like it at all. But in the normal wide mode, if you get your horizon through the middle and everything stays fairly straight from a distance, if you're filming up close, I tend to use linear mode, which goes to about a 35mm equivalent of a 24mm lens, I think. So it's pretty wide. It's not super wide. It's not like a 16, but you do get nice straight lines instead of the kind of bowing up at the edges GoPro kind of traditional image, which I don't like personally, because it just doesn't look like reality, and not in a good way. If you're like kayaking or mountain biking or skiing or something, and you just want to kind of capture whatever's going on, massive field of view, and crop into it later, absolutely fine, but that's not my use case, so I don't personally like that. It leads me on to a bit of a limitation with the GoPro. It's not so much a limitation, it's just it wasn't designed for what I had in mind. You can only record 4K in the wide mode, because in linear it's cropping on the sensor. You can't get the full pixel readout of 4K, because the full readout in wide mode, the whole sensor, is 4K. So it means when you crop into it for linear mode, you can get a maximum of 2.7K. So I ended up filming most of the time in 2.7K 50 frames a second, in case I had to slow something down afterwards. And to be honest, that's more than enough resolution. I'm delivering in 1080, so I don't really need a lot more. If I was delivering in full 4K, that would have been a problem, because I'd have to upscale that 2.7K footage to 4K, and I don't think it'd do that well being upscaled. It's super clean, you know, but I don't like upscaling anything, and I'm not entirely sure that I'd mix with proper 4K out of an A7 if I were to do so. So that's kind of a little bit of a limitation for my use, but you know, I'm probably not using a GoPro how a GoPro should be used. I'm just using it for handheld moving shots like a gimbal, and I'm using it for static time lapses, and that's kind of it. So there are probably better tools out there to do the job for me, but I love the colours out of it. I love the output. I love the files to play with. They're absolutely fantastic. Now, one other thing I don't like about GoPro is, I don't care what computer you've got, if you've got a Mac Pro like that new fancy one, 50 grand from the Apple Store, the files from this will probably kill it. There's something about editing GoPro footage that just grinds everything to a halt. Like, you have to generate proxies in Final Cut for it to be workable. You can't just work off the original files, because even on my quad-core i7 MacBook Pro with like 16 gig of RAM in it and a PCIe SSD, there's no chance I can do that. Like, it's an absolute pain. So you have to wait for all the proxies to render before you can start working. So that's one limitation, but there's something about the kind of science in their files which is just kind of crucifying to computing power. Like, I don't get it. Like, no other cameras that I've used have had quite the same effect, except maybe Fuji RAW files when editing photography in Lightroom. Like, yeah, it's a similar thing to that. I got so much usable footage out of it. I was absolutely blown away. The colours are great, the form factor is fantastic, and ever since we took it to Africa that first time, which I'll show you the footage in a bit, I've been taking it to weddings as time lapses. I've done kind of wide shots from the back of the ceremony with it, like as an emergency backup in case someone stood in front of one of my other cameras. I've done some commercial projects with it as well. I used it on a styled shoot. I actually used it on a commercial project as well for an IT company where we were doing super wide warehouse walkthroughs. A 25mm on the A7 that wasn't quite wide enough. So this allowed me to get some really, really wide vistas. Now, I haven't talked about the most exciting thing about this, which was new in the Hero 7 Black, and I'd like to just finish by talking about this, and that is the stabilization. Now, I am a Sony shooter. I am fully signed up, full Sony A7 III shooter, so I am resigned to the fact that I have rubbish stabilization in my cameras. It's fine, you know, it works for static handheld shots. You don't get all those jitters like you did on a Canon 5D Mark III. It irons all that out, but if you try to do any movement with it, no, you need a gimbal. This thing, if Sony took this technology and put it in an A7 body, possibilities would be limitless. Honestly, every gimbal manufacturer would go out of business. This electronic stabilization, I thought it was a gimmick until I used it. After I've been using it for about 10 minutes, it is just absolutely remarkable. It's so smooth. The way it works is it's a bit like warp stabilizer in Premiere, whereby you've got the full frame and then it'll crop 10% off the edges and it'll use the pixels on the outside to move kind of where it needs to be. So it does crop in a little bit because of the stabilization, but it irons out all that jittery movement. It's beautiful. And when you're doing things like hyperlapses, when you're doing moving shots, you can just do it handheld. You still need to kind of bend your knees and use proper technique like you were using a gimbal, but you can get it so smooth. It is 99% of using a mechanical gimbal just in a kind of little thing like that. The only limitation from my perspective with that is you can't, like when you're using a proper gimbal, you can lock it level. So you can do a walking shot and keep it level. With this, it's more like having it in FPV mode. So you've got to really concentrate on keeping that level. I use this as well, so you can hook your finger around there and keep it mega stable. But you've got to keep it level as you're moving. Otherwise, you can go off and you can kind of get all these FPV movements. Sometimes it can be cool to do kind of sweeping shots around like that if you do it really slowly and don't give people travel sickness while you're doing it. But most of the time when I'm doing moving shots, I just want to move straight forward. And again, there are probably better tools out there for the job, like the Osmo Pocket or using the A7 on Weeble Lab when I've got the room and the inclination to do so. But for what it is, I think their stabilization is absolutely incredible. I think it could be market changing. And in the Fuji X-T4, they've got something similar. So I'm really tempted to pick one of those up to play with that, because I really think optical stabilization combined with the electronic stabilization could mean handheld shooting on video for so many people. Like, it would be an absolute game changer. Anyway, digression over. In conclusion, Hero 7 Black has been absolutely revolutionary for our filmmaking and for our travels. It's let us get so many things that we wouldn't be able to capture because setting up like a bigger camera would be too time consuming, or we wouldn't want to leave it out somewhere to get absolutely soaked. Yeah, this is a fantastic tool that I bought kind of on a whim, but it's become an absolutely essential part of our kit. I absolutely love it. If you haven't picked up a GoPro yet, just do it. They're for nothing now. You can get a second-hand Hero 7 Black for very little money. Even like the new 8s aren't that much money, and they're slightly smaller again, which I can't believe. I've not had one of my hands on those yet. However, yeah, this is absolutely brilliant. So yeah, go forth, create something when we can all leave the house, of course. And yeah, I'm sure you'll absolutely love it. I'm going to leave you with the Africa film. Everything that looks wide in the film, every time lapse, every moving shot from a vehicle is done with the GoPro. So enjoy, let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you next time. See you guys.